Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about two-step equations with fractions. We're going to discuss clearing fractions if you don't necessarily want to work with them, and some different strategies you can use to solve these equations. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our first problem here. So we've got a negative 1/5 outside of our parentheses, and then 5b minus 15 in parentheses equals 12. So remember, before we solve an equation, we need to look at the side that has the variable and we need to simplify that side. So that would be over here, our left-hand side of our problem. We need to simplify this before we can solve anything. So since we've got a fraction, negative 1/5, right outside of our parentheses, we are going to distribute our negative 1/5 into our parentheses to simplify that. So we have to do negative 1/5 times 5b. So let's first start with negative 1/5 times 5 over 1. That's going to give me negative 5 over 5, which is just negative 1. So I'm left with a negative 1b. And now I need to multiply negative 1/5 times negative 15. So negative 1/5 times negative 15 over 1. So we get positive 15 over 5, which gives us 3. So negative 1/5 times negative 15 will give me a plus 3, and then I'm going to bring down my equals 12. All right, so now we've actually got a pretty simple two-step problem that we can solve. So we are going to go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides first. So we're left with negative 1b equals, and then 12 minus 3 would give us 9. And then we do have a negative 1b, so we're going to have to divide both sides by negative 1 here to get rid of that negative and be left with just b equals negative 9. Now I want you to keep in mind this is just one way to solve it. We could have also used the method of clearing fractions, which we'll talk about in the next problem. All right, so in this problem, I've got 2/3 and then in my parentheses 24 minus k, close parentheses equals 16. So just like our last problem, you could go ahead and distribute the 2/3 into the parentheses, but when I'm looking at it, I know that I'm going to do 2/3 times 1k, and I'm going to end up with 2/3 k, so I'm going to have to be working with fractions, and I don't really want to do that. I want to make my life a little bit easier, so I'm going to clear fractions in this problem. Of course, if you want to distribute and work with fractions, you should get the same answer either way, but I'm going to show you the method of clearing fractions so that you can understand how to do that if you would rather get rid of it. So when you clear fractions, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the problem and you're going to look at for any fractions that you have. Well, I only have one fraction, and I'm really looking at the denominator. So what you would do if you had several fractions in the problem was you would find the least common denominator between all of them. Well, I only have one fraction and the denominator is 3, so my least common denominator is going to be 3. So once you figure out what that number is, you are going to go back and you're going to multiply the entire equation by that least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 3. Okay, and I'll show you why we're doing that in a minute. When we do this, though, I do want to point out we are not going to multiply the inside of any parentheses by 3. You only multiply what is outside of the parentheses. So when we do this, we are only going to be multiplying 3 times 2/3 and 3 times 16. You're going to do it by the whole thing. So off to the side, let's take a look at what 3 times 2/3 is. So if I do 3 times 2/3, 3 over 1 times 2 over 3, I end up getting 6 over 3, which simplifies to 2. So I've gotten rid of my fraction. So I have a 2. Remember, I keep my 24 minus k. I can't do anything with that. And then I need to do 16 times 3. So 16 times 3. 6 times 3 is 18, carry the 1, and then 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4, so equals 48. So once I multiply everything by that common denominator, let me erase my work here, you're left with whole numbers and you don't have to work with fractions anymore, which just makes my life a little bit easier. Again, it's just preference. So now I'm going to distribute. I'm going to multiply inside of my parentheses like I would have anyways. So 2 times 24 is going to give me 48. And then minus 2 times k is going to give me 2k equals 48. Okay, and now I just have a two-step problem that I definitely know how to solve. So I'm going to solve like we normally do. Okay, so I'm going to start with subtracting 48 from both sides. Okay, I'm left with just negative 2k over here equals, and then I get 0 on this side. Okay, well, I'm going to keep solving, so I'm going to divide this side by negative 2, divide this side by negative 2, and I end up just getting k equals 0, because 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. Now again, this is just one way to solve it. You by all means do not have to solve it this way. There's a bunch of different ways to solve this, but this is again just one of them. The biggest thing here, if you do like to clear fractions, is to make sure when you find that least common denominator, you multiply both sides of the equal sign. You just don't multiply anything that's in parentheses by that common denominator. And the reason why that works is because all you're doing is making the entire equation 3 times greater, but you're doing it on both sides, so it makes it the same. It doesn't really change the problem. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, so I can't really clear fractions here. I do have a fraction inside the parentheses, but remember when we are clearing fractions, you can only work with things outside of the parentheses. So I'm going to start here by distributing. So I'm going to distribute that negative 8 into the parentheses. Remember, you're going to simplify everything with the variable first. So I'm negative 8 times negative 1/8. So negative 8 over 1 times negative 1/8. That's going to give me a positive 8 over 8, which is 1. So I'm left with just 1p, or you could put p. And then negative 8 times 8 is going to give me negative 64. Now I need to bring down what I did not distribute, which is that negative 2 or the minus 2 right there. So minus 2 equals negative 4. Okay, as I've been saying, you still need to simplify everything before you start solving. So I still have stuff on the left side of my equation that I need to simplify. And if you look, I can combine like terms here. I've got a negative 64 and a negative 2. So I'm left with 1p minus 66 on this side equals negative 4. Now I can actually start solving my equation. So I'm going to add 66 on both sides, which will leave me with just p because it's 1p. And then I have 66 and a negative 4, which would leave me with a positive 62, because I actually have to subtract the numbers and then keep it positive. So p equals 62. All right, this next one here, we do have some fractions, and I look, if I'm going to distribute, I am going to end up working with the fraction, and I don't want to do that, so I'm going to clear my fractions here first. So remember, you're going to look at wherever you have fractions. I only have one, so it makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to find my least common multiple, which in this case would be 3. So I'm going to multiply this entire thing by 3. Remember, we can only multiply 3 by things on outside of the parentheses, but you do have to do it with everything outside the parentheses. So we are going to ignore what's inside the parentheses when we multiply. So 3 times 2/3, 3 over 1 times 2 over 3 is going to give me 6 over 3, which is 2. So I'm left with 2 on the outside of my parentheses. My r minus 12 stays. Then I have to do 3 times 3r, which is going to give me plus 9r. And then I need to do 3 times 3 on the other side of the equal sign, which is 9. All right, so now that I've multiplied everything that I can by that least common denominator, which was 3, I can solve, or not solve yet. I still got to keep simplifying. So look on the side that has my variable. I need to distribute now. So I need to do 2 times r, which is 2r. And then I'm going to do 2 times 12, which is 24, so minus 24 and then plus 9r, because that wasn't in the parentheses, and then bring down my equals 9. Still can simplify here. If I box this up and look at my train, do my train. Okay, I've got a 9r and a 2r that I can combine, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So when I combine there, I get 11r minus 24 equals 9. Okay, now I can start solving for my variable. So I'm going to add 24 to both sides. Okay, which gives me just 11r over here equals 33. And then the last step would be to divide by 11. And that will give me r equals 3. All right, for this one, it's hard to tell by looking at it, but if I do distribute first, I'm gonna end up with fractions. So I'm gonna clear fractions here so I don't have to work with them. And remember, we're finding the common denominator of any fraction we see, and 4 is gonna be that number. So we're gonna multiply everything by 4. But now here's where it gets a little tricky. I'm gonna multiply it by a -4 because I want to get rid of this negative as well and make it positive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply this whole thing by -4. And again, don't touch anything that's inside of your parentheses, so we're not going to use those. But we're going to go ahead and multiply again by -4. So off to the side, I've got -4 over 1 times -3 over 4, which is going to give me positive 12 over 4, which gives me 3. So I'm just left with a positive 3 on the outside of my parentheses, so minus 2x plus 8 equals, and then I'm going to multiply 6 by -4 as well, which is going to give me -24. So be careful there with the negative, but we definitely want to get rid of it because it just makes our life a whole lot easier. Okay, I'm going to solve this one a little bit differently than we did before. I'm actually not going to distribute. I'm going to divide the entire thing. I'm going to divide this whole thing by 3 first to get rid of the 3 on the outside, which means I need to divide this by 3 as well. So what I'd be left with is -2x plus 8 equals, and then -24 divided by 3 is going to give me 8. And then I'm going to continue to solve my problem. So -8 minus 8, I'm left with -2x equals 0. Oh, this looks very similar to the other one we did. If we divide here by 2x, divide by 2, -2, divide by -2, we're left with x equals 0. So that's just another strategy you can do for solving. Like I said, I divided the whole thing by 3 first, and then that got rid of the parentheses and the 3 on the outside of it, and then I continued to solve like I normally do. You could have also distributed here like we've done, but again, this is just another way to solve it.